All right, let's get on into it, and I'll get folks
People
around.
tell me people tell me I have a loud voice, so we'll see how this goes. Hi, everyone. So I really appreciate Sean, Diane, everyone giving me this opportunity to give you an update on AI with Care. But also, in addition to giving that update, I really want to talk about what I think is potentially a significant opportunity between I2B2 and AI with Care. It's really kind of neat. I did not anticipate the types of things that Sean, Griffin, others would talk about, but I think that this presentation may wind up being sort of, I'm hoping that it serves as kind of a, an extension of points that they raised. So I've been in health IT for a very long time. The hair gives it away. You blink and it's like almost 25 years. And I do think that one of the really challenging things in the field, something that like, it's grown more challenging over time, but this optimization between why we all come into the field, you know, wanting to make a difference, wanting to improve patient lives, and the realities of funding and the challenges associated with funding, and like really the what I'll call the increasing challenge of navigating those two things in a synergistic way. I'm not someone who believes in the saying, no money, no mission. I think that there's an enormous amount of volunteer work that happens in healthcare, especially within the health IT community, that does an enormous amount of good, but there is, at the same time, so much that requires funding in order to move forward on. So in this presentation, I do want to focus a little bit more on that funding piece and sort of present potential path forward to being able to do more work. So what I'll cover is I'd like to talk more about the enrollment problem associated with clinical trials that we've already heard about today, tell you about what AI with Care does relative to this, tell you about what I see the opportunity as being, and then if there's an openness to having a conversation about that, Q&A, et cetera, love to engage in that. So these are statistics. Sean shared this first statistic earlier. 80% of clinical trials do not complete on time. This next statistic, all of the statistics here are sourced from academic materials or things that I think, materials that I think are credible. However, I think if you talk to actual clinical trial sponsors, they will tell you that many of these numbers appear, in at least many of the cases, very low compared to actual experience. So I put 11% here again, sourced from, I think, a credible source, but 11% of sites enrolling 0 patients. Many would say that their experience is much higher than that. And, you know, when these sites are set up, as Sean was discussing earlier, what it takes is, there's a lot that goes into setting up a site. It's a lot that goes in on the sponsor side, a lot that goes in on the healthcare provider side, in terms of getting all the agreements in place, getting the infrastructure in place, et cetera. The sponsor needs patients enrolled in order for that to be a good outcome. And the site does too. If you look at, even if you look at it, put aside the patient benefits that it can accrue, which are obviously the most critical part of this. But there's also, sites are usually compensated based on the number of patients they enroll. So the sites need to enroll patients in order for this to work. Again, another statistic, and this is consider this an average. There are many trials that are way, way more than this, but $840,000 a day that is lost in either patent life on drugs, so revenue from the drug, or the combination of that and operational costs. So just think about that in terms of the opportunity to create value, capture some of that value and what that value can do for the health informatics community and the work that all of us want to do. And then 32% of the costs associated with trials are in the recruitment phase. And I will tell you from the trials that I've worked on, I do think that that is a material underestimate. But overall, it's an average. So the problem of manual chart review. So you wind up with a clinical trial. It has potentially tens of inclusion-exclusion criteria that a patient needs to meet in order to be enrolled in the trial. You've got two ways to go about finding patients in general. You're either going to look at your patient population and find patients that you have seen before that meet the criteria for the trial, or you're just going to try, as patients come in, you're just going to try to identify those that meet criteria and capture them in the visit. The second is really slow. So in an ideal world, you're doing a lot of work through the first. When you're in that world, you've got your entire patient population. And if you need to do chart review, you hire people, you hire study staff to do chart review. And the question is, how much study staff are you going to hire, and what percentage of your charts are they going to be able to review? You've also got the problem of chart review takes time, as Sean was mentioning. So you've got only a percentage that you're going to review, and then you've got the time to review them, and all of that becomes, too few, too late. So what does AIwithCare do? So what we do is we provide a solution called AIwithCare Studio. It interfaces with electronic health records through FHIR, pulls in records per patient, and does a deep evaluation through a RAG-based process to identify which patients, looking carefully at unstructured data as well as structured data, which patients meet the inclusion-exclusion criteria in a pre-screening evaluation. And then it surfaces to the study team its evaluation with the evidence from the chart that it used to reach its conclusions. And then the clinicians go in and confirm who is eligible for the trial. So it has worked really well for us. So the top graph was published in New England Journal of Medicine AI, and the red is the AI-based capability. Rectifier is what we call our engine. The blue is highly trained study staff for a trial where we did this. And what you see is the red consistently outperforms the blue, and it's a little bit too small to see, but most of these things are statistically significantly so. So it's evaluating patients more accurately. Like the way that this came into play was we initially put this into place thinking that it was going to help our study staff, just putting it in front of study staff in the process so that it could identify patients that were more likely to meet criteria that the study staff could then evaluate, have a greater hit rate, and then go on to the clinicians. When we compared the study staff success rate in evaluation to Rectifier and found that Rectifier was working better, we reassigned the study staff for patient outreach, patient-facing activities, and replaced the pre-screening part with the AI. The bottom charts published in JAMA, The one on the left shows the rate at which patients are identified through, this was a prospective randomized trial within a trial where we gave one group of study staff access to Rectifier, another group didn't have access. We switched them back and forth over time. And this is the rate at which patients were identified across the two groups. And what we saw was 84% more enrollment from the group that was, from the patients that were screened with Rectifier than patients that were not. So there's two ways that the solution can be deployed. One way is we can host it for institutions. We sign BAAs, we hook up to their single sign-on infrastructures, their FHIR-based APIs, and process it for them. Tends to be for smaller institutions that have less IT staff. The other thing that we can do is install within a hospital's Azure tenant. When installed in that way, the hospital can entirely control the network parameter around the solution so that they can ensure that no data leaves the institution. They can also block us from entering the system if they would like to. So this is a solution that could potentially be merged with the enclave type infrastructure that was discussed earlier today and keep everything secure within the hospital. So that's AI with Care. So the opportunity with I2B2, what could that look like? So I think it's probably fairly clear. I2B2 has this amazing capability to, once it's installed, it's nearly free, right, to be able to run queries. So to be able to identify using all of the structured data, what patients meet the criteria that can be evaluated in that way. And a lot of those criteria are going to be like really selective. Age, for one, can narrow the patient population down a lot, but then all of the other things that I2B2 is really good at assessing. And because that is so inexpensive to do, you could potentially be consistently generating cohorts using I2B2 and looking at, as time goes by, patients' care evolves, you can constantly be looking at which patients now potentially qualify. And then what AI with Care can do is really deep analysis. It's designed, AI with Care is designed to, at a time, typically look at 1,000 patients up to like thousands to like maybe 10,000 patients at a time. It's not meant for looking at millions of patients at a time. So you can use I2B2 to look at the millions, get that down to 10,000 likely qualifying patients or less, and then assess them with AI with Care and identify patients very likely to qualify. So again, you'd start with the full patient population. I2B2 executes the query. We take the cohort, give it to AI with Care. AI with Care produces the in-depth evaluations of each of the clinical trial inclusion/exclusion criteria that can be assessed using EHR data, supplies that back to the studies team. Study team now enabled to enroll patients much faster, fundamentally change their economics. So overall, how this could really, where the synergy could really come into play is, again, lower cost, faster. We put the two solutions together. Based on what's already deployed, this is a potential way for I2B2 instances that are already deployed to add augmented value to study teams in ways that could be extremely measurable in terms of patient recruitment success fees. There's potentially a really easy handoff here. You could envision ways that AI with Care and I2B2 could be deeply integrated with one another, but there's really no integration that would be required in order to start delivering value. I2B2 can output files of patients, and those files of patients can be loaded into AI with Care without a lot of effort, and then the end result assessments could be given to study teams. And again, all of this could be done while maintaining the security of the data without exfiltrating any data. This all operates under BAA infrastructure. So integrated workflow, investigator defines initial criteria in I2B2, runs that criteria initially on the entire patient population, gets a refined cohort, potentially reruns it periodically to get new cohorts. I2B2 returns that cohort gets loaded into AI with Care, deep evaluation happens, and then surfaced to the study team. So the idea here is if there are groups here that would be interested in running a pilot, we would love to work with you. The way that this works is when this is used in the case of a study, the sponsors pay for the use. So we install AI with Care for free within healthcare institutions, regardless of whether they are running a trial that one of our sponsors is paying for or not. We always install for free. And then the use of the system in the context of that trial is, or any trials that are covered by sponsor agreements, is entirely paid for by the sponsor. So if this is of interest to you, we would love to speak with you. And that is my last slide.
Many questions, but that was really cool. And I want to ask you about this issue, like when should the institution pay, when should the sponsor of the trial pay, and then the really important point of like sharing the data. If you do it through like a sponsor paid implementation of something, you know, that would be a wrapper for, you know, qualifying patients and collecting the data and putting it, you know, into the you know, the right format for running the trial. And how integrated are you with that? And then, how should an institution think about really getting maximal learning from everything that they're doing in you know, kind of recruitment and you know, data once you start pulling data in. Oh, and let's see. There was. Oh, that's enough. That's enough for now.
Yeah, let me see if I can remember them, and I'll read it. So the the first point was institutions, who pays for it? Institutions versus non-institutional use.
Trial sponsors.
Yeah. So the way that we are, so within Mass General Brigham, this is the rectifier engine is used for lots of different stuff. It's used for clinical trials. It's used for clinical use cases, things like triage, because really the capability is, which patients in this population meet this set of criteria? From an AI with Care perspective, we are totally open, excited about the idea of supporting non-clinical trial use cases, but our initial focus is on the clinical trial use cases because it does make the economics work easier. And in those use cases, it's always the sponsor that pays. So unless the institution wanted to run this totally independent of, you know, of a sponsored agreement, but like if you were to come to us and say, you know, we're really interested in this, we'd like to run it as the institution ourselves, the first thing we'd say is sure, but shouldn't we go to the sponsor first and like just ask them if they'll pay for it? So that's the first piece. For sponsored clinical trials, the the sponsor always pays. In terms of the data arrangement, so our position as AIwithCare is that it's your data, and you being the site.
Is that the sponsor's position?
Well, so this is where we will only give data to the sponsor that you tell us is okay to give to the sponsor. So there is the potential for, a discussion between you and the sponsor around what data is appropriate to give to them. And we will help you give to them what you believe is appropriate, after you've negotiated that. But from our perspective, we are signing a BAA with the site. This is the site's data, and we need permission to give it to somebody else. I don't foresee, this being like patient level data moving. The conversation is more about aggregate level data, like statistics, how many patients qualified, didn't qualify, that kind of stuff is where I think the conversations come into play. You want?
I'm just thinking that, there, like some sponsors write just an incredible data model and data accrual criteria, just absolutely beautiful, and others have sort of very short criteria and so we wanted to be, basically cross-trial learning for the optimal model of running trials, and so we can, train an aggregate model that could do the best, even, so even if it's a really rare disease where there's a very, very financially limited resource sponsor, what can we do to boost those protocols to make them be, just as high quality as possible?
Yeah, so two answers to that. One is within AIwithCare, within AIwithCare Studio, there's a lot of statistics that it shows you about the different criteria relative to which ones are succeeding, which ones are failing. And then you can even drill down into like looking at bias within those criteria and, whether there's any, whether the results are reflective of the characteristics of the patient population.
The monitoring, like the details that they're monitoring as you go, that's like really rich stuff. We're doing that.
Yeah, so that again, those displays are for the site as opposed to for the sponsor by default. There have been, so one of the things that we give the sites the option to do, and it's an option, so the site does not have to choose to do this, is we give them the option to participate in, like when pharma is evaluating the feasibility of a study, whether they would want their site run relative to that. And so that kind of, for sites that want to participate in that, it kind of creates a mechanism whereby pharma can look at, does this set of sites, would they qualify for this trial? And if not, do I still want to go with the trial, or do I want to tweak the criteria and see if something would work better?
It's just really hard to set up trials with kids, and because kids you have this extra safety thing, and so what are all the best things that you can build into trial design so that the trial gets to kids faster?
Yeah, I can imagine.
I totally love that idea of you freeing up your specialist people to do like real outreach, reconciliation with what's in the EHR versus what you actually get when you talk to people. That's really a cool thing on what you've got.
Yeah, they really, that's why study staff join the team, is because they want to be able to talk with patients, connect with patients, help patients. They don't want to be like reading like the chart to see if like you meet this specific, set of criteria for heart failure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. You mentioned using ITV2 to create the candidate cohorts. Of course, with computed phenotypes, you can get a candidate cohort that's closer to the inclusion-exclusion criteria than from the raw codes in the EHR. So with a further enriched cohort, I'm assuming that that would make the LLM approach within AI with care more efficient, potentially more accurate. Is that
I think that makes complete sense. Yeah. And it'd be really interesting. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly going to like speed it up, and and you're reaching the prior probability associated with finding good hits. So I think it's inherently going to make it stronger. The other thing, and I think this is partially to Sean's point, you could also use something like this to, if you want to assess the computed phenotypes,
mhm,
to do an LLM-based assessment of that.
exactly? Thank you.
Thank you all.